Good morning, Siege.
Yes.
Who got coffee in their lap on that one? I'm not scoring any points this year. All right, I'll do better next time. All right, who's having a good time at Siege today? Who survived last night? A couple of you did. Yeah, I see some pain still out there. That's why I'm talking so loudly. Again, my own amusement. But thank you all very much for joining us for the final day of Siege. We're very glad to have all of you out here for the career fair, the esports day, and all the sessions happening inside. We have the great Ask an Expert booth. Kurt Harding from Tripwire will be out there specifically for you programmers to talk about how to improve your career chances and your how to present your programming portfolio effectively. I wanted to go through a few of the changes for today. Not too many of them, but two great ones we have going on. This panel has had a little bit of a change today for lunch. Brunch, I should say. This is brunch with a side of influencers. Really happy about the lineup we have today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I know a lot of you out there either are looking to become influencers with your YouTube, Mixer, Twitch, etc. channels. And a lot of the rest of you who are game devs need to work with influencers effectively to promote your games these days. Whole new avenue people are not used to. So really happy to have these insights from this group. This panel will go till almost 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock will be our last session. And if you're interested in esports, we're going to have a great lineup of people in here to talk about how to go pro with esports, including the General Counsel for Turner's E-League, the General Counsel for Hi-Rez Studios, several very successful esports athletes, and more. So this will be a great lineup in here, too, for anyone with an interest in esports. And make sure you're visiting the career fair while you're here. This is brunch, so please do enjoy. We'll be doing our town hall at 3. This is the first time we've actually done a session during this brunch. So I'm very excited about it. It's being live streamed, so think of your best questions so that you can be as part of the stream as you promote your own influencer channel. And with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to Wes Wilson.
Hello, everybody. Do I have heat? Do I have heat? Hey, there we go. Okay, so my name is Wes Wilson. I am the guest liaison here at the convention. Additionally, I've been working with influencers for about a decade. I was an influencer in the pre-monetization YouTube days.
Oh, man.
When you had to give an arm and a leg to Machinima, and they might give you $1,000 a year for doing so. Back in the day, which is really funny because I'm dear friends with a lot of the Machinima people now. But back then, it's like, we got to do what? But yeah, so I've been in the industry for a really long time, but we have an excellent lineup here. Why don't we go down and introduce ourselves one by one?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is James Portnow. I run something called Extra Credits, along with Extra Sci-Fi, Extra Mythology, the other extra things. I'm actually a game designer by trade, but I guess I have to say now what I do is make tiny animated videos on YouTube for a living. You know?
Howdy, everybody. I'm AJ Damiano. I run a company called PowerSpike. We help connect Twitch influencers with brands for sponsorship opportunities. Used to be an influencer way back in the day. I remember the days of TGN. I was signed with them, actually. So
you too?
Yeah, me too.
I was in the original Curse MCN.
Oh my god.
Really?
Yeah, the one that they got shut down.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicholas Valence Bayshore. I was a YouTube partner for 4 years, a Twitch streamer for 5 years, and a journalist for 5 years. And now I work for Hi-Rez Studios and Skillshot Media as the Paladins Esports Community Manager.
So one of the things that most people everybody loves the idea of influencers, but at the same time, the very definition of one is sometimes up in the air. So how do each of you define an influencer and what they do in our environment?
For sure. I mean, I think influencer is a lot broader than people think, and I think that's both positive and negative, right? I think often you find that a lot of influencers don't know they're influencers, which I think is really interesting. You know, I've had numerous Twitch streamers when I worked on the dev community team that would come up to me and be like, hey, I only have 50 viewers or whatever, but I don't consider myself an influencer. Like, you are. Do you play the game and have an influence in the community? Absolutely. So for us, it's usually anyone that has an influence in the community that plays our game and regularly provides feedback for that loop.
Yeah, for us over at PowerSpike, it's really anybody who can kind of sway an opinion within some kind of a community, whether that be in gaming or for a specific brand or something like that. Like you mentioned, like if you have like 50 viewers or something of that nature, like you are an influencer and you have people that are listening to you and trust your opinion on things. So it's kind of how we define it.
So this is a tough question for me because I actually don't consider us to be influencers. And like even with millions of people regularly watching our videos, the only influence that we're really trying to make on most of you guys is to design better games or to hopefully be excited about something like history. But that we still have a lot of people coming to us and asking to do sponsorships and all these sort of things because getting people excited or interested or learning about something is a big part of getting them to end up with a product.
Right. And what do you like? I find that when I think of influencers, I think of the old concept of tastemakers. That there are a group of tastemakers who are helping shape opinions and things like that. And these are very valuable financially for companies. But like, what do you think is the primary motivation with like being an influencer? Like, how do you look at why people put themselves in a position to become an influencer in their individual markets?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, like, again, the boundaries really mute, right? Like, there's two different ways to do it. So, like, from my personal time as a Twitch streamer, I never considered myself an influencer for the many communities that I streamed for and, like, was a part of. And then, you know, on the Hi-Rez studio side with Paladins, right? And we have a lot of influencers who I consider influencers, right? That would work with us to shape the game, regularly provide feedback. I mean, you know, back in the day, I guess, well, let's be honest, like 6 months ago, we were patching every 2 days or 2 weeks because we're a free-to-play game, right? And so that was key to our cycle. But every 2 weeks, that means a great new loop of feedback from tons of influencers all over, right? So I think for us, it's really anyone that's willing to provide that feedback and also speak about that feedback in like a public forum, right?
So there's a lot of people who go out and want to be famous or rich. I think those are the wrong reasons. One, even being D-list famous actually is terrible. Never want to do it. I was at dinner with my parents and my nephews. I had someone come up and ask to take a picture with me, which is on the one hand great, right? It's awesome to have an impact. On the other hand, you never get that moment where you can just live your normal life again. Being rich, you're probably not going to get there. The monetization is not that great, and at least you're like me, the more money you make, the more people you bring on the team you can create from within. The reason you become an influencer is because you're passionate about that thing. I love history. We wrote about history. I really wanted to have people actually play our games, understand how they were designed, and so that's what we did. So to me, if you're going to become an influencer, don't think about those secondary things, because if that's the only goal and when you get there, be passionate about this thing and build a channel because you're passionate about it.
Agreed on that entirely. Like for me personally, I started on YouTube as a YouTube partner with TGN Games when you had to sign away your life, you know, in order to even be able to put video game content on YouTube without a copyright strike. But I worked with them heavily, and I turned it into a job where it was not, hey, I want to make this video because like Shadow of Mordor is awesome and this new Nemesis system is super cool. It was, I want to make this video because I need X amount of views in order to pay my bill this Friday. And that became like a really big like warning sign to me. And so that's actually when I ended up jumping ship from YouTube and going all in on Twitch with my personal channel. And the goal I set for myself there was much like you suggested, right? Have fun with it and see where it goes. And then if I get a little something extra out of it or whatever, cool. But my goal was to always throw that back into the community and make sure that people are getting rewarded as being a part of that system.
I was just going to say, like, video editing is really hard. Like, it takes a lot of time to do. So if you're not waking up in the morning and you're super passionate about what you're doing, like, I remember the average video I said it took me 20, 30 hours to make. Like, it takes a lot of time to do this stuff. So if you're not passionate about it, if you're just trying to do it to get famous or for the money or whatever have you, probably not going to get out of the bed in the morning to do that.
I mean, the truth of the matter is that most people think that, for instance, being a gaming influencer is just, oh, you play games.
Right.
And there is so much more work that a lot of people don't consider with a YouTube channel or with a streaming channel. There's also business contacts you have to maintain. You have to monitor all the email that's coming in. You have to manage your community. There are a million things that go hand in hand with producing content. And most people just think, oh, it'll be easy. But if it's easy, then the problem is that almost everybody would do it. And you can see the people who get weeded out. You can see, there's been a recent push about mental health and YouTube and mental health and streaming. Yeah. And it's legitimate, especially if there any kind of a performance expectation. You know, if the algorithm needs you to get out a video a day, if you need to do this, the demand can put you in a position where you really do become a workaholic and you put yourself in danger.
That's certainly present. That happened to me personally because at the time when I started YouTube with TGN, I was going into college. And so I went into college for journalism and stuff, which was taking up most of my time. But I was a full-time college student. I was also working in order to pay bills and save up some money. So I was working at Best Buy selling computers. Yep. Windows 10. It was a lot of fun. And then it was also my nighttime was YouTube and streaming. So my day-to-day schedule would look something like waking up at 10, taking the dog out, all that, heading to class, being in class till 6, coming home, getting dinner, working at Best Buy for 3-4 hour shifts, coming home at 10, streaming until 2 a.m., and then setting up a YouTube video to render, which I would then wake up at 9 a.m. in the next morning, put on YouTube, and then go do it all over again. And looking back, would I do that? Absolutely not. It really negatively impacted my health. And to your point, that's something you definitely have to be aware of.
Yeah. But let's talk about getting into the influencer biz. I know some people here are interested in doing that. Is there any recommendations you have for trying to get into it that you feel are poignant?
Just start doing it. The moment that you have an idea for something and the moment that you want to start something, you should start creating content. You should start trying to do it. I remember, at least for me, the first few videos that I made were terrible. But looking back, making that type of content and getting it out there is the only way that you can really learn and get better. If you're really passionate about it, if you really want to get into it, just start.
Yeah. So I completely agree with that. And like with games, fail faster, right? We're always looking to make our videos better. At the same time, consistency is really important. Unfortunately, if you're putting out a video every month and a half, you're not going to get that many people to remember to come back. And so you have to sort of say, okay, 3 times a week, I'm going to have a video out at exactly this time, every week, week in and week out. And that's tough. That becomes, as you said, a real job. I was working at Activision and as a game designer, and then my entire night was just writing scripts and getting the YouTube stuff done. But if you can maintain that consistency, it'll start helping people know you're around and make it very easy for me to say to a friend, hey, on Monday at 5, come check out this thing, right?
I think setting up manageable goals is extremely important, especially, YouTube and with streaming on Mixer, Twitch, Facebook, etc., right? Having manageable goals is huge because you look at most streamers, right? And I think all of us can agree that when you say it's all right, these guys stream, 8 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week, right? And you set that as the instant goal for yourself, or you start trying to equate yourself to them and seeing what you can do that they do that'll make you cool. And that's not the best way about going about it. It's consistency. I made a huge mistake myself when I first started streaming on Twitch, where I would stream whenever I could, because some nights I'd have to stay up late and do that one YouTube video, and I'd be like, oh, well, I can't stream tonight, and I'd announce it at 9:05 p.m. when I was supposed to go live at 9:30, and that really hurt me tremendous. It was ridiculous, because then people would come up the next day and they'd be like, oh, well, he had a last minute thing come up, so I'm going to go see the new Venom movie instead or whatever, right? That's the establishment you have to build for yourself. So if you're just getting started, even if you can only do 1 to 2 days a week, do 1 to 2 days a week. Don't do more. And then once you've managed that and feel good about it, then you can think about how to add on further.
I think one more really good piece of advice that I got early, it was from a creator in the WoW community named Tally. I asked him, how do you grow your channel and, how do you actually get it out there? And I the piece of advice, it stuck with me, for my entire life. And it's you got to go where your audience is. If you're a World of Warcraft content creator, go to the WoW forums, go to the WoW subreddit, promote your content there. Like, you have to understand who your audience is and focus on delivering the content to them wherever they may be. So,
yeah. I think a lot of people get a misconception. I mean, like, being on for 8 hours straight is not easy. No. Like, a lot of people, you're just playing video games for 8 hours. But if you're being a good content creator, you are putting on a show. You are working, and it's just like public speaking. If you were doing public speaking for 8 hours straight, it would wear you down really, really bad. And a lot of people don't realize how bad that can hurt you. And I've had professional streamers who have like burned themselves out because they tried to keep a set of hours that wasn't realistic with the rest of the stuff that was going on in their lives. It's not an easy job. And the other thing is the odds of success are really, really slim. The odds of you becoming an influencer, of you becoming a noted content creator are slim. Now, you can build a good community and become, a moderate influencer, but a lot of people think they're instantly going to be, a ninja or a PewDiePie or whatever. And the odds of that happening are really, really slim. They remind me of the odds. I took an acting class in college, and my acting teacher said the average, and this was in like 1988, so you'll have to forgive that a little bit. But he said,
"You're not 27?
No, just look it." But he said the average actor salary is $6,000 a year, and that includes Jack Nicholson. And it's because you have a few people who are really, really making it, and then you have millions of people who are not. But at the same time, that doesn't discount the value of that low-end content creation, both as a tool for growth and the ability to still produce quality content. If you're passionate about it, you should be willing to stream the same for one person that you would be willing to stream for 100 people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you can't do that, people always come to me and they ask me the question like, hey, I just got started streaming. I'm enjoying doing it, but it's weird talking to like 2 people. And it's like, if you can't sing your heart out and broadcast your heart out for those 2 people, you sure as hell do not deserve 300. Yeah. Or 400, or going up into the thousands. Like, one of the big things that always frustrated me, both as a community manager who works with influencers, but also as an influencer myself, is everyone views viewers as a commodity. These are not just numbers, guys. Like, these are real people, and instead of watching Game of Thrones, which is very good right now, they are watching you speedrun Zelda and fail 13 times because you can't get past the one shrine jump, right? Like, it always happens, right? But these people, they want to invest their time in you. They want to invest their time in your brand, and they trust your judgment. And so it's really important to, even if it's 2 viewers, even if it's 5 viewers, look at those 5 people and realize they're people spending time with you instead of doing something else, and you should never view them as just a number.
Yeah. I was just going to say, anything good takes time. Like, if you look at Ninja or Myth or a lot of these like top creators on Twitch right now, like, these guys have been broadcasting for like 5+ years. Like, they have poured their hearts out into these platforms, and it took them years upon years upon years to actually quote unquote make it. Anything good takes time, and you have to have that commitment and the willingness to be consistent as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about you're starting to become a notable influencer.
Right.
What kind of steps do you need to make to capitalize on your growing influence in your industry?
Well, it depends on kind of what you're doing, right? Like, so from I'll just use the Paladin standpoint as an example, right? Because that's what I worked on for a while last year. We run a stream team on Twitch. We work with influencers across every platform, right? We do all of that stuff. And I think the most important part is start small. Don't start big. Like, if you wanna play Destiny 2 and like get really far up the ladder, that's awesome, right? But if you do want to start as an influencer and start building connections, start with places that make sense for your community, but also that make sense from a numerical standpoint, as much as I hate to say that, right? So it's like, hey, I've got 50, 60 people. I really enjoy playing this one game. Let me go and start talking in the forums and contributing to the regular feedback loop, right? Here's what we think. Here's how we can help. Here's how we can positively affect your community. And then start reaching out to community managers. I get, emails all the time, 50 to 70 a week about stuff that's like, hey, I'd love to work with Paladins. I'd love to work with Skillshot. I'd love to work with Hi-Rez, all that sort of stuff, right? And the key thing is that like we're willing to talk with you. I think one of the biggest things that I had to learn was to value myself. Right? A lot of streamers go out there and they say, "Oh, I'm not Ninja. I'm not Shroud. I'm not Dr. Disrespect. No one's going to want to talk to me." But the reality is that we want to talk to you guys very, very fast, no matter how much of an audience you have. And if you don't meet certain criteria that different companies have, 9 out of 10 times, us as community managers will be willing to work with you guys in order to help you build your brand and offer constructive feedback. So don't undervalue yourselves.
So true. On the end of like the brand and advertiser side of things, I think it's really important to find the opportunities that make sense for your current size as a streamer or as a content creator. For example, like Ninja and Dr. Disrespect are going out and they're able to claim multi-million-dollar deals that are like year over year, and they're just able to get these massive opportunities because they have the audience size to command it. If you're just starting out and you're a creator, you're not going to get a deal like that. A lot of times you won't even get a paid deal, quite frankly. A lot of times, like as a small scale creator, a lot of the stuff that I've seen a lot of people focus on are the affiliate based promotions where you can partner up with the brand and actually like you get a cut of their every sale that they're doing. So that's one way that I see like a lot of smaller content creators start to kind of get involved with sponsors and advertisers. The real thing is that you have to understand what makes sense for your community and what makes sense for you as a creator, and work with brands that work with that audience. So if you're like really into fitness, and maybe you should be working with some kind of a fitness brand or something like that. But just understanding your audience, understanding your community, and also understanding kind of the size of your stream and what kind of deals you can command, like knowing your worth, is super important when it comes to actually promoting these brands and advertisers for these paid deals.
And for me also, business development is something you're continuously going to be doing. Even once you can hire someone to help you with it. I go to a lot of conferences, right? And at all of these conferences, at any of these places I go, I'm talking to developers. I'm talking to people who might be interested in partnering with us, right? People whose brand makes sense with our brand. And so have those conversations. At first, you're going to do them over Twitter. Yeah. But as you go out, have them face to face. Start meeting the people who you've met over Twitter, the community managers. And as you make those connections, you'll be able to turn that into monetization. But before even monetization, I thought some of what you guys were saying was really good about talk to community managers. Community managers love to get you into their exclusive events. They want lots of people. They want even small influencers playing their pre-release Magic event or whatever, right? Showing off their new character on a streamers-only day. And that helps you because you have content now that a lot of other streamers may not have. And it helps them a ton because they have to pay you nothing, right? To do something that's great for them, that's just pure advertising for them. So you can always start there and start participating in those. And weirdly, lastly, in a lot of those sort of events, the devs will open up a Discord for everyone they've invited into those events. And it's a great way to meet both bigger streamers and get us more sort of personal contact with some of the developers.
We do that with our Paladin stream program, actually. We have a core stream team on Twitch, you know, who we work with, and we've worked with for a long time. But we also have sub-streamers, right? So our goal is to provide content a lot, right? So there's always something that you can watch Paladins. And so most of the time we'll be like, hey, you know, we have to have Hi-Rez as an example, right? One of our main stream team guys. I got to step down because I had a family emergency. Okay, cool. This slot's now open. Which sub-streamer wants to take it? And then you get that time slot, you get that idea, and you get the backing of that, which is really cool. And I also love what you talked about, too. Talk to us. I get so many tweets on a daily basis. I get so many emails, and I will do my best to get through all of them. But 9 out of 10 times, if I see you at an event and we spoke and we had a sit-down conversation, I will remember who you are and thus respond to that email a little bit more on a priority system, so to speak, right? It's just the reality of building relationships. Always build them personally. So when you guys are walking around Siege, you see someone that you might be interested in, come talk to us. We love to hear it.
And don't be shy either. One of the big mistakes you can make is sending an email to a community manager or something like that, saying, "Hey, I'd like to be involved," and then you don't hear back. Yeah. But it might be that your email just got missed. Yeah. So touch base again. Say, "Hey, I sent you an email a week ago. If you have some time to talk about it, I'd love about it. Exactly. I'd love to talk." Yeah. Don't be shy. It's there. The industry is maturing. And as it matures, it no longer thinks I have to get the PewDiePies and the Ninjas in order to have successful promotion with doing influencer work. People are beginning to realize that finding some low-cost, high-devotion, medium-sized influencers is often way more valuable than getting a one-off from somebody who's never going to mention your product again.
And that's the stuff that's really surprising. Like when I was a Twitch streamer before I started at Hi-Rez, it was weirdest story, but it's a worthy story of telling. I went to TwitchCon and I bumped into Deej, good old Bungie guy, my good friend David. And David and I sat down at a hotel bar and talked for a couple hours. And then lo and behold, when Destiny 2 rolled around, I was on the PR list and I didn't even ask to be. And so they sent me a code and said, hey, stream it, enjoy it, have a good time with it. All that sort of stuff is like, oh, wow, all right, awesome. And they ended up flying me out to the Destiny 2 event as well. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Just always be willing to talk about your brand, who you are, the stream events you're looking at putting on, and what you're interested in.
Yeah. It's something that brands are really taking notice of as well when it comes to micro-influencers. For a lot of the campaigns that we've actually ran, it's been like 10, 20, 30 influencers at a time that can comprise just as much viewership as maybe like one larger scale activation. And a lot of times on these kinds of promotions, like the brands see the results. They'll see like a 10, 15% click-through rate. It's just insane. And a lot of the times it comes down to if you're a part of a smaller community, you have a lot more face time with your audience. And you have a lot more opportunities to actually talk to them one-on-one and really get to know each person in your stream. And as a result, that leads to actually a higher level of engagement within these smaller communities versus when you become a super large streamer where it's just hard, you can't keep track of like 20,000 people that are watching you or something like that. It's just not possible. But with brands and advertisers, they really do see the power of these smaller scale creators and what they can bring to the table for their brand.
Okay, so let's kind of flip to the other side of this equation. We've talked about what it's like to be an influencer and how you can leverage being an influencer. But what about you're a game designer? You're a company making a product and you would like to leverage influencers to do promotion. Yeah. What are some of the kinds of things that you want to look for when trying to do those kinds of promotions with influencers?
I think on the Hi-Rez side, we work very closely with our influencers. One of our pillars at Hi-Rez is community. And so we put our games out as soon as we can, and we work with community members to make them the best game possible. Because, you know, in reality, the idea between a community-driven game and a dev-driven game is that the good game is somewhere in the middle, right? We're, as a studio, we're not always right, and as a content creator or player, you're not always right, and the good part is to meet in the middle and work on something that's meaningful. And so for us, you know, when we have a game that's ready to go out to the public and ready to start getting feedback, we loop everyone in as soon as possible, and that includes influencers too, right? So, you know, if, for example, you're a Paladins player, right, and you're one of our influencers on the Paladins stream team, if we have an upcoming game or experience, we're like, hey, well, you know, we have this awesome new thing coming out. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? Or if you're, you know, let's say we're working on a new expansion for Paladins or whatever, I don't know. And we know that it's going to include a new feature that a lot of influencers may enjoy that previously wasn't included. We'll reach out, want to get your feedback, your expertise on it, and go from there.
I think one of the most important things you can do when it comes to working with influencers is to let them have a say in the creative. I think that too many times you'll have this is super prevalent with like mobile game publishers as well, where they're like coming and they'll be like, okay, here's the script, please read this for me. And it never works out well. Audiences see right through it. And when it comes to influencer marketing, it's really all about authenticity. It's about having an influencer be authentic with their audience. And nobody knows their audience better than the person who's going to be promoting your product or service. So just working with them directly and in tandem to create some kind of promotion that makes sense for both the company and the influencer is typically where the best activations come from.
You stole mine down to the word because it really is. Authenticity is absolutely what's the most important, and we've had companies come to us and try and give us those scripts, and we just say no because at the end of the day, nobody's buying it, right? Your audience is smarter than that. And what you're getting from the creator when you're paying for an influencer is sort of that brand they've built and the trust that they have with their audience. So for us, we actually don't do we'll never do a Let's Play. We never do anything where we have to promote or shill a game. Instead, we just we offer people the opportunity to provide our audience more content. And I know that sounds weird, but we run one extra history show a week. Sponsors can have the option to get us to run a second extra history show every week for however many weeks they want. And at the beginning of each of those, we say, this is only possible because of these awesome people, right? And we'll relate it to their content, right? So World of Tanks comes to us, and we'll do stuff about World War II in history. But it's not outside of our brand. It's nothing about their game, but it's just that beginning. And when our audience sees, oh, these people love this thing that I love enough to just give me more content of it for free, we get a huge click-through on that, right? Sony just asked us to do, we were doing Extra Mythology. We just launched that series, and Sony asked us to do it for God of War. And, of course, that made a lot of sense. We could teach the Norse mythology rather than doing something totally off-brand, like just playing the game. Our audience would have never accepted that. But by saying, hey, here's a bunch of mythology episodes you would have never gotten otherwise, that was something they were excited about, and they were excited about the product because of that.
And one of the big things there too, right, is like what you said, building off of those connections, right? Like one of the things we do with a lot of Paladins influencers is we'll fly them out to events. So if we have a 24-hour stream or we're doing raising money for charity. So we did Spring Fling this year, which we raised over $100,000, which was awesome. But in order to do that, we also flew out influencers and said, hey guys, we'd love for you to be a part of this. So we brought out some from Paladins, we brought out some from Smite, and then those guys got connected. They got, studio tours, they got to walk around, all that stuff. But then they meet more people that helps them further build that, right? Yes. So it's a giant loop that is always going to build into itself.
Well, and as a company, helping your influencers gain more influence is just good for you.
Yeah.
But one other thing I wanted to say, with all that said, make sure you do get a final approval. If you're going to give your influencers a lot of creative freedom over what they're doing with this stuff, just make sure you do get final approval. You should almost always rubber stamp everything, but every once in a while, you will get an influencer who is doing things they really shouldn't in an episode that also features your brand, right?
Right.
And you just need to be careful and make sure that that's not happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the other things I've noticed is that certain companies have gotten wise on how they are utilizing their influencers, and they'll actually build tools into their product that make it so that it's doing something good for the influencer. Mm-hmm. This is something that I would recommend to, for instance, I was with Mixer for a while, and certain games would create Mixer interactivity for their game, and that way the influencer got something. They got to create unique content because the person who is utilizing them recognizes that providing something to this influencer is valuable.
Can I ask actually all you guys, have you seen any metrics on that? Because that was a big thing, right? Like from a development side, from a design side, it was a big thing adding Twitch capable and Mixer capable features into your game. And a lot of, at least some of the indies that I've talked to, that hasn't had the impact that they sort of were sold on.
Right.
And so I was wondering how much impact that has and how much that actually draws influencers to games.
I know at Mixer for a long time, if you could have an interactivity enabled game, the odds of it being played were much, much higher. Right. Now the problem is that interactivity with an audience works up until a certain point.
Right.
Based on how people are designing the mix play for Mixer, if somebody has 200 people in their audience and they're just clicking the buttons all the time, it doesn't make for a playable game.
Right.
You have to do play testing and balance on your interactive tools just like you would on your regular game. But I do think it inspires more people to create content with that product. It's just that there are some limitations. And for instance, I know the new Left 4 Dead game, Earthbound.
Oh no,
Earthdawn.
It's in my head. I'm gonna Google it.
Anyway, their interactivity buttons would spawn full-sized gargantuan mobs, and there was no play testing on it.
Oh,
and
no.
I would start the level, and they would drop the giant crusher mob before we even had picked up our guns.
Can I actually talk about that? Because from a design side, I know that there's been a lot of discussions that we've had about this. And if you're going to have interactivity buttons, people like to be jerks to streamers on a lot of these things.
Yep.
It's better if your interactivity buttons are positive, actually. From what I have heard, positive social interaction not only is good modeling of behavior for communities that may need it, but also people actually feel better. They think it's funny to drop the huge mob on you, but that's not super engaging. Being able to have 100 people vote to give a potion to your streamer when they're about to die and help them win that level that was impossible, that's something that people actually love. So think about positive interactions rather than negative interactions when creating your Twitch or Mixer integrated content.
I think one of the challenges as an indie developer as well is always like budget. Like you're always on a super constrained budget and you have to find sort of creative ways to market the game. If you can build some kind of interactivity into the game or build something like directly for the influencer into the game itself, it's a surefire way to get somebody to actually start playing the game on stream. One game, Darkest Dungeon, I think it was, they had this badass announcer, and what they had him do was they had him like voice over things for like different streamers. So like for one person it was like, "Welcome to the dankest dungeon," or something like that. And it was just like this custom voiceover line for like each individual streamer. And it was like the coolest thing. And they got a ton of people to actually activate and start playing their game off of that.
Yeah.
So
I know Sleep Tight had Mixer specific leaderboards. And so if you were playing on Mixer, the leaderboard, and so there were reasons for Mixer people to get involved in that because you got publicity within the game itself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something too that like we've leveraged on the Paladin side of things too with our stream team. When we first kicked off the big initiative, right? We have something in game which are our rotating panels, right? And so the rotating panels come up and thousands of players see those every minute, right? And so one of the big things we wanted to do for our stream team was say, hey, let's work with you to make a really awesome panel that when you're live streaming Paladins that day, we can feature you in the game and direct people over to your chat room, which worked out great.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of positive stuff from creating tools that utilize influencers more. I do think that there's some joy in the negative stuff because I think everybody loves watching a streamer freak out when they're trying to solve something and all of a sudden, you know, I mean, there's some great schadenfreude there and good laughs and that kind of stuff. But I do agree that you got to play test this stuff. You got to think about it. One of the main problems I saw on Mixer was that developers put static prices on their individual buttons. So the in-stream currency that was used to pay for it was locked down, and it's much different when you're a 20-person stream versus a 200-person stream. Right. The amount of currency that's floating around, and so it just needs a little bit more.
There's parts of that too, going off of that, that are pretty terrifying. One thing that I saw a lot of Twitch streamers do is they would put currency in their chat, and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, like, watch for X amount of time, get like 30 coins or whatever, and then you can spend these coins to get like your own emote or your own thing." Do not do that. Do not. Like, I made that mistake when I was first like kind of rebranding my Twitch channel on my personal stream, and I thought I did the math right. I did not do the math right, because after like 2 or 3 weeks, people had watched enough, because you know, you sit there and you're like, there's no way Phil's gonna watch me play Dark Souls and wipe against a boss for 8 hours today. There's no way Phil's gonna do that. Phil does that. And then you have Phil over here with his 100,000 coins, and your top prize is a 50,000 coin, get a custom emote. And so you're making emotes for Phil every week. And it's like, okay, this probably isn't the best use of my time, so definitely think about it before you do it. I've lived that.
I'd like to talk also about one of the most powerful tools I've seen where you can utilize influencers, and that's having a clear way to communicate straight with your audience. Press releases are one thing, but if you can have a good communication line with an influencer so that they understand your company and what you're doing, they can communicate better with their audience than a press release could.
Absolutely.
Have you seen any good examples of this where people have been using influencers to communicate with their audience?
We do it with Paladins all the time. We obviously have our patch notes, and we have our big announcements and our news posts and stuff like that. But one of the things I work over in the skill shot side, on the esports side of things. So whenever we have like a big announcement coming, or hey, we're gonna do some awesome new drops for this event, right? I actually tell my moderators and some of my influencers ahead of time. That way they can sit there and ask the questions that your average audience member would, so that I can knock them out of the park before I even ship it, right? Yeah. Which is super helpful. I cannot count the amount of times that has saved me in the last year, and it's pretty amazing to have that level of connection. Like for our stream team, we have a Discord where they can contact us 24/7. Will I respond at 3 in the morning? Probably not, but I will hit it when I get up in the morning. And so having that avenue and making sure that your influences are up to date, understand what you're doing. Maybe there's a controversial change, right? And it's like, oh, well, we have this mentality. You explain it to your influencers, and they're like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense with the given context. And then when it does go live, they help you kind of ride that wave out, and everyone's like, ultimately, this was a better decision, right? So always try to keep them in the loop.
So what have you seen as far as like, what are the, let's talk more from the dev side. I want to capitalize on some influencers and get them promoting for me. What kind of investment do I need to look at, and what kinds of things do I need to put into scope for making this happen?
I think it varies depending on what type of company you are. So like and what type of activation you're looking to do. If you're an indie developer, for example, you probably don't have a large budget. So every penny counts, right? So you probably don't want to go out and spend like $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 on trying to activate like a ton of people to play the game. What your strategy should probably be is more so along the lines of building a relationship with the influencer very early on, getting them involved in the actual game development process. Just bring them into the loop as early as you can, sending them out free copies of the game and just being like, hey, try this out. But not demanding that they like do something in return for that is really key. So if you have like a super small budget, there's like a lot of really creative ways that you can do to get people excited about the game and start playing it. If you're a larger scale studio and you have a much larger budget, the relationship route is still really important. But you can get larger influencers to actually start activating for the game. There are people out there who will just generally not play a game if it's not paid, because they can just command that. So I think it really depends on what your goals are as a publisher, who you're trying to work with, and what the scope is of the activation that you're going through.
I think also, kind of what going on for what we were just talking about, making sure your influencers are involved in your promotional process is extremely useful. One of the things that we do with Paladins, which has been a blast to do, not just for us, but for our influencers, is if we have a new champion coming out, right, we're super excited to tease them. Usually what we do is we'll drop, photo teasers and reveal them on the patch show. But instead of us just doing it on official accounts, we started to do a practice where we'd say, hey, Faye from the stream team, we would love for you to maybe drop this teaser or drop this thing. And so they're the bearer of that news. We then retweet and share it on social media. So it's extremely exciting for them. They get more engagement. We get more engagement. There's also that level of hype. But the other thing that's really cool that we started doing, which has been a lot of fun, is we have our streamers and influencers do events to compete for who gets the rights to release that teaser. And so it's actually super fun where we'll do hey, we have this great new in-game event. Let's take that in-game event and have a streamer versus streamer competition. They get to make their own teams of streamers, and they can pull in who they'd like. And then those streamers also get recognition. Then we take that event and say, all right, let's do it. We broadcast it on our main channel, throw that out there. We get that loop of engagement. And then whoever wins that gets to drop that awesome teaser. So it's a nice little cycle that's been really successful for us.
As far as getting in touch with and working with streamers, this sounds very silly, but actually care about the channel that the streamer is doing, right? Actually watch it. We all the time get, dear unfilled text box, we know you do the YouTube. Can we pay you money to do the YouTube for us? And those are always no, right? But somebody who says, hey, I watch your channel. I love your stuff about the South Sea bubble. I happen to work at Wargaming. can you do something? We'd love to do something with you guys, right? We're all way more likely to respond to that stuff because also immediately we trust you more because when we say we need to do something for our audience, you're way more likely to get it.
Absolutely. And like, also as a developer, please watch your streamers. Like, oh my gosh, man. Like I'm off for the weekend, right? I'm here. I'm doing cool stuff. But yesterday and throughout last week, I wanted to bring someone new into the fold, and I watched his Mixer channel day in and day out. And I typed once, and it was a big deal, and he enjoyed it. But now he's in the fold, right? And so watch the people who are doing the content, help them make it better or you know, whatever needs to match on that level, and then work with them to make something good for both of you guys.
Super important to be genuine. Just add one more thing. Like the number of times that I think that our influencers have gotten some kind of email from a brand or like a publisher that's like, hey, blank text box here, love your content. And then they don't go to explain like why they actually love the content or anything like that. It's super important to be genuine and actually watch the content before you start working with that influencer.
And as a reciprocation, if you're an influencer and someone sends you something, say Xbox sends you a controller, or you know you get 20 keys from Hi-Rez, you know, for a skin, and you get to give them away in your stream. Treat that like they're doing that because they want you to promote their stuff. So what you need to do is return the favor and say, hey, thank you so much for what you sent me. Here are some tweets I made of the, you know, announcing what you did for me. And here's a link to the VOD or a link to the video of me giving this stuff away. Here is some tweets, right? Like, basically do reporting. If somebody gives you a gift, say, thank you for the gift. Here is what you want in return, which is the exposure that you gave this to me for.
And just on a legal front, you actually do have to declare some of that stuff. Not every key that you get, but if somebody's paying you or giving you something of substantial material value like a computer, you do have to actually say that they gave it to you when you play their games.
Hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored.
That whole new trend. And that's also one of the really interesting things is like that type of relationship lasts forever. You know, I still have people that when I was a journalist and when I was a Twitch streamer, they still reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, would you like to cover our game?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, man. I've left the industry. I'm now doing the dev side of things." They'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. Can you just send me an email with your feedback because we really appreciate what you offer?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I mean, yeah, sure, if you want me to." And then, like, but those relationships last forever. So the second you start, build them.
But I've had a lot of people who are like, yes, I would really love to play this game. Can I get a key? And then you get a key to them, and then they never tweet out. They never stream the game. They just end up taking the thing and not doing a reply. And for the most part, that's not a tremendous amount of skin off anybody's, you know, teeth or anything. But at the same time, like if you want to be professional and build the kind of relationships that are going to get you more stuff, make sure that you're reporting on what you got and what they benefited from giving it to you.
We worked with this amazing streamer called Meg Cayley, and like the promotion was for Soylent, and she was just such a huge Soylent fan. Like she talked about like how last year at TwitchCon, the only thing that got her through the day was just drinking Soylent. So we got Soylent to send her this massive care package of like 5 different flavors of Soylent, and she ended up like tweeting out this picture of her like sitting in front of all these boxes like and it was just the most amazing thing. Like Soylent ended up retweeting it, but brands really do take notice of that kind of stuff
and we will likely share that, to your point, further, which just further increases the loop. I mean, that sort of engagement is just a giant loop that keeps on going, so don't undervalue it.
And they continue to activate with her to this day, so she continues to be sponsored by them.
That's awesome, man.
And social media is super important. Like when you're an influencer, like let's say you're a Twitch streamer, you know, your Twitter and your Instagram and your YouTube are part of your brand. You know, it might be that you're focusing on Twitch, but you also need to pay attention to your social stuff. And when you're going to be streaming a particular game, tag the company. Let them know I'm streaming this game. Stick a picture on it. Pictures and tweets get more engagement than anything else. Instagram has really, really high engagement. If you can get some good Instagram stuff going, there are ways that you can capitalize on your social media to, I mean, it's not that it's not that it's your job as an influencer to build other people's business. But if you want to get tools for you to build your influencer network from other people, then it's an in-kind thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like social media, that's one of the things I've talked to a couple people today, and I've talked to a couple people over the last couple weeks that have just been like, I'm not on Twitter. Should I be? Absolutely. Always, like, Twitter is one of the most valuable places to kick in a relationship with a dev, with a individual, with a company. It does not matter, just by tagging them and making sure that stuff's on there. So, you know, have that presence, have that there. And then also, kind of looping back into the start of our conversation, be aware that that takes time, and that's now time that you should factor into your daily schedule, right? So always have time for that. But yeah, if one of the big things that's a great example with Hi-Rez is fan art. We love fan art. Sometimes I'll be scrolling and I'll be like, oh, not this fan art. But, you know, it always kicks back. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh, this is really, oh, no. But we love fan art, and so we do Fan Art Friday. We do it every Friday, right? And a bunch of people tag, instead of tagging Paladin's game in it, they'll tag myself or Molly or Alyssa or anybody else. And most of the time, we'll toss it out there, and that helps your exposure, that helps our exposure, and it allows us to both be excited about something that we mutually enjoy.
So let's imagine I'm a game dev or some kind of product designer, and there's a particular influencer that I want to have, like, in my pocket. What are reasonable expectations for things that I can expect from influencers that they'd be willing to do to work with me?
I think that it starts at a very basic level, right? So, like, if I see somebody and I'm like, they're great, I would ideally love to work with them, right? There's a mutual level there. So it's like, first, do they play Hi-Rez games? Do they play stuff that we can engage with them on? Do we have that sort of similar grounds? And then we look into them, we watch their streams, we see what they're doing, and we say, okay, well, this is someone we would like to get invested in. How can we help them, right? How can we toss them some codes? Can we get them involved in an event we got going on? Maybe we want to invite them to Hi-Rez Expo and see, you know, hey, this is the power of the Hi-Rez community. Let's see if we can meet up, talk about it, and then go forward. I think that initial step is probably the most important step. And then from there, you can go into everything else we've been talking about, right? Here's how we can support you on a regular. Here's how we can do this.
If you don't know what's reasonable, ask them. Like, yeah. it sounds like a crazy concept, but really, influencers know best, and they know their audience best, and they know what works for their audience best. So oftentimes what you think might be reasonable may be totally out of the park for them. So just having that conversation and the dialogue with them and saying, like, what do you think would make sense here, and what do you think is reasonable, oftentimes can lead to, like, the best activations and results.
And then, even if it doesn't work out, you've now built a line of communication that can develop as you further go along.
Well, do we want to take audience questions? Okay.
Ready for it?
Does anyone have any questions? You can just step up to the mic.
Are we that good?
Well, here, I'll ask you guys some questions. Who here, like, is trying to build their name as an influencer? Okay. Okay. That gives me an idea what we're looking at. Okay.
Oh. Oh, no. They did that thing to you.
Uh-oh.
What formulas do you use to calculate your net worth?
Sorry, I missed that.
What formulas do you use to calculate your net worth?
What formulas do you use to calculate your numbers? Which number? Your net worth.
Net worth, okay.
I just make it up and have it be really high.
Honesty. There we go.
There are some things, like, if you want to look at what your value is as an influencer, there's obviously concurrent viewership is a prime number, because it's just raw how many people are watching me at once. View hours are good. Concurrent viewership. Additionally, like, and this is information that's more proprietary, but if you're in a platform where people pay you, like, if the number of paid, not Prime subscribers, but paid Twitch subs is probably one of the best numbers you can have for the amount of engagement your channel is getting and the strength of your community. Because if you've got people willing to pay for your content and support you, you know, the amount of money you're getting at a Patreon is another good indicator, you know, that lets companies and devs and stuff like that know this is how invested my community is with my content.
So on YouTube, it's subs, average viewers per episode, average view time per episode, because you want people getting to the end of the episodes. And then once you start doing some of these campaigns, click-throughs, right? If you can show that a large portion of this audience also then goes to whatever site we're talking about, that's very valuable to some sponsors.
On Twitch, we found it to be totally average concurrent viewers, and then also the time that of the sponsorship. So if you're doing like a 60-minute sponsorship and you have 1,000 average concurrent viewers, I think if you like multiply it together and then multiply it by like 0.1 or 0.15, like that's something that we've seen kind of like floating around for a few people, but generally those two stats are really what make the difference.
From us too, it's largely what Wes had said, right? We look at concurrent viewership. We see how many views you're pulling on a regular, because that determines like, you know, loyalty on your stream, as well as subscriber count is extremely important. And a lot of people look at it as like, hey, we have, you know, concurrent viewers. We have, here's how many followers they have. Followers used to matter. Followers don't matter anymore. Like I remember back in the day when Justin TV just became Twitch, it was like, hey, 1,000 followers, you're partnered. And that was that. That was the number. Because it was like, wow, these 1,000 people are invested in this. That is no longer an accurate calculation of who's invested in you. So concurrent viewership, subscribers are huge, and you know, from a streamer perspective, keep track of them. Do not worry yourself sick about them. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, I'm a failure, and never do that to yourself.
And
never
also,
do that to yourself.
I joked about make it up, but really, choose a number that's you're okay with to be doing that content, and see if people bite, right? And if people do, and then you're getting a lot of work, raise that number up, right? And see if you're still getting it. And so long as you're slammed with work, just periodically over time, keep raising that, because that's just, I mean, that's functionally how the market works, right?
Yeah. And that also like goes back into what we were talking about with the whole feedback loop too. It constantly loops around, and as long as you're remaining consistent and you're keeping track of everything and going out and talking to people, you're making connections, and that's all going to cycle back into those numbers. So never stress about them, but always be aware of them. Thank you.
Hey, so say you are trying to be an influencer, but you start from nothing. You don't have hardly anybody. How do you make yourself grow so you can at least get to a point where you're getting consistent viewer?
Okay,
sure.
So the best thing that you can do if you want to become, if you want to grow a community, the best thing you can do is integrate yourself into other communities. What you want to do, like, let's say you want to be a Destiny streamer, right? And what you want to do is go hang out in your favorite Destiny streamer's channel and be there and have them see you. Now, obviously, you don't want to advertise your stream in someone else's stream. That's really gauche. But what's going to happen is when that streamer is done, and you can capitalize on this a little bit. You know a streamer is going from that you really admire and you're active in their community, and they're streaming from 10 to 3. Why don't you start your stream at 2, and when they're done, maybe they'll raid you. Yeah. Maybe they're going to bring their audience to you, you know? Yeah. But integrate yourself into communities. Volunteer for those communities. Be invaluable pieces of them. And those people will remember your name, and they'll seek you out. But yeah, give before you expect to get.
At the same time, though, understand why you're unique, right? Yeah. Have some proposition, because if you're just doing whatever that big streamer is doing, but worse with less people, no one's actually going to sign up, right? Yeah. Find what that little bit is that separates you out.
That's extremely important, right? Like, if you look at the history of, like, Twitch, for example, it was funny because when it first got started, it was like, what's the first? There's always like the cool thing to have, right? Like, and you can break it down however you want. The way I've always viewed it is, first of all, I was like, wow, my stream's in HD. That's awesome. Everyone wants to see that. Okay, now I have a webcam. Now I can see that person live, and that was the cool thing to do. That's how you got viewers. And it's like, oh, now I can see follower notifications. Oh, now I can see subscriber notifications. And like, there's year by year, right? There's always that cool thing. We're out of cool things, right? We are there. Show us what the next cool thing is, right? But also, one common mistake that I see everyone do who wants to get into streaming, I'm guilty of doing it myself too, is I went and I watched the streamers that I enjoyed, and I was like, hey, this guy does this cool thing, I'm going to do it. And it's like, to your point, no, he does it better than me, so I have to make it my own, right? So be sure to do that, and also when you're going to communities, extremely important. Like, the whole reason I swapped from journalism to community management is because of the power of communities. It's incredible. Like, some of the stuff that people have done blows my mind. One of the most, I would say, profitable investments for me as a streamer was getting involved in the Extra Life community. Extra Life's phenomenal. They raise tons of money every year for all these kids who can't even hold a controller, right? And so I did Extra Life 5 years in a row, and every year it got exponentially bigger until I was invited to join a local guild. And then I became part of the Extra Life Knoxville Guild when I was in college. And then those streamers helped me by building their communities into mine and mine into theirs. And we all created this like whole community where when Extra Life happened, we killed it on the numbers and we helped a lot of kids out. So be sure to reach out to different things. Twitch meetups are huge. There's Twitch Atlanta. Get involved in that if you want to stream on Twitch. Go out, talk to people. Streamers are not your enemy. They're not your competition. Viewers are not a commodity. You're all willing to work together, and in most cases, you'll find that most streamers and content creators want to see others be successful as well. If they don't, you probably shouldn't be friends with them.
Understand your community and go where they're at. I'll give you like an example of one thing that I did with my YouTube channel way back in the early days. We were creating this guide series called League 101. And the whole idea was like we get like a top-rated League of Legends player to create like this amazing guide, and then I would voice over it, and we do all this crazy video editing on it. It was kind of like the like the summoner overview, or I forget like what it's called, but like
I feel like I've watched these.
Yeah, it was like it was like an in-depth overview. And one of the things that we actually did was there was a site called Mobifier at the time where you could create your own League of Legends guide on. And what would happen is whenever a new champion would come out, everyone would rush to that site because they want to actually learn how to play the champion, and they try and find somebody who was actually competent in it. So what we would do is we would get access to it was like the testing server or the PBE. And what we would do is we would go in and we would record footage of this champion before it even came out. And I'd get like this guy who was my friend who was Diamond to actually learn and understand the champion and how to play it. And then we would write and produce a guide for it all before they actually released the champion. So we do this all in like 2 weeks. And the day that the champion came out was the day that we released the video, and also the day that we put a guide on Mobifier. And the cool thing about that was that if you're a diamond-rated player, it says diamond next to your name. So you know everyone's going to go check out your guide because you're the best.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we would create like this really bare-bones guide, and it would be like, come watch the video if you want to see more. And the guide ended up getting like, I think 2 million hits, and the video ended up getting like 700,000 views. And we had like 1,000 subscribers at the time. And it just moved the channel up from there.
That sort of stuff's crazy. And like, it's wild how many connections you can make too. So like, for example, one of the things that when I started at Hi-Rez was a new concept to me was viewing parties. So each year we do HRX. And there's people around the world who can't make it to HRX. So they go to our viewing parties, which we help officially sponsor and put out there. And one of the things that's wild is like, I've seen so many people who, 1-2 years ago were wanting to be streamers that have like gone to events like even that. Like, I'm going to go to this viewing party. Oh, you like Paladins? I like Paladins too. I'm thinking about starting a stream. Cool, I'll watch you, right? Like that stuff all factors into it. So be active for sure.
One other thing to consider, and this is a pretty serious gambit here. You've also got to decide what you want to produce. If you decide to be a single game streamer or single game video content creator, you're going to see a faster growth in your audience.
Yes.
Because you're going to have a more focused product. I used to be a podcaster. My Minecraft podcast did great. My Team Fortress 2 podcast did great. When I made a general gaming podcast, it did not do great. Right. And the reason isn't that we didn't have fans. It's that the people who would watch, who would listen to our podcast for our talk of Age of Conan, okay, wasn't interested in our talk about the puzzle game. And what those people weren't interested in our talk about this. The problem is, if you make yourself a single game streamer or content creator, once you're done with that, you're going to have a pretty rough transition, and you got to be prepared for it. So you can build a great community with a single game, but I always recommend hedging your bet just a little bit. Yeah. Otherwise, that transition down the road, when you move on from that game, is going to be really brutal.
It's terrifying. Like, as someone who's hands down experienced it, I have multiple friends that have experienced. I have a good friend of mine who's been streaming first person shooters for a long time. Everyone's invested in a particular game that he streams. Everyone loves watching him play Battlefield. It's great. It's awesome. He does a very good job at it, you know. Because of that, he was able to start working with EA, right? I mean, it's really incredible. But that is what people want to see. So the second he decides to do anything else, or maybe there's this brand new game that was like, oh, well, you know, we'd love to work with you. Oh, I'd love to work with you too. But then the second you're pigeonholed into that one area, you go to stream with this other partner, and then your viewership tanks. He would see tanks of almost half to 70% of his viewership, and then everyone who was in there would only ask him to play that other specific game. Don't make that mistake. It's a slower growth, but it's a better foundation.
On average, we've seen we do a ton of data and analytics at PowerSpike, and like one of the things that we've seen is when an influencer like swaps game from their primary game, the viewership typically goes down like 30 to 50%. It's pretty dramatic. So yeah,
I know people who are afraid to not stream Fortnite right now.
Yeah.
Like afraid. They do not feel they can make their living if they change their game, and that's because they capitalized on the growth of it. And yeah, that's great, but where do you want to be and what content do you want to create? You got to keep that in mind. Let's get another question.
Yeah, good question, man. I love the Deadpool.
It's actually, it should be a pretty quick, almost a yes or no question.
Cool.
So if you have sort of an older account, like maybe Twitch, for me it's YouTube, I used to upload content pretty regularly, and it has a pretty good average view rate, but I haven't uploaded in a while, and people haven't viewed that stuff in a while.
Yeah.
So should I start something new, or is like, will that hold me back? Should I stick with that channel, or should I start something like fresh and that'll be better? Like, is having an older channel that is less active now holding me back, or would starting a new one hold me back more than having one that already had content?
I think it depends on the identity, right?
Well, and I would say just from a YouTube, like, under the hood perspective, any channel that, if you've got subs, if you've got videos with views on them, that's going to be just a better place to start in terms of search ranking and all that than just rolling a new one.
Yeah. And from a community standpoint, is if your identity remains the same, they'll come back. They always do.
Okay.
Like, I haven't streamed for 9 months, and I still have the same 30 to 80 people talking to me every day. They're there. They love you. If you've already established that, there's no reason to throw it away.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would love to grab contact info for
All right, our
every
next panel.